Well, greetings and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Dwayne Butcher with Lean Frontiers, and it's my pleasure to host today's webinar. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping items. First, you'll notice if you have questions, you can submit those through the GoToWebinar toolbar that you see on your screen. I will collect these questions and ask them of our presenter at the end of our session today. Submit your questions as they arise in order to ensure that we have time to get to each one. Secondly, today's presentation will be made available in two different formats. First, a recording of today's session is going to be available shortly after the webinar for you to review and share with others in your organization. Secondly, the presentation in a PDF format will be made available immediately following the session as well. So with those brief housekeeping items out of the way, let me introduce our speaker today, Dr. Richard Schonberger. Dr. Schonberger is president of Schonberger & Associates of Seattle, providing seminars and advisory services to industrial and service organizations around the world. He is author of over 170 articles and papers, a 12-volume video set, several books including Best Practices in Lean and Six Sigma Process Improvement, as well as World-Class Manufacturing. Among his current activities, Dr. Schonberger is director of the Leanness Studies, an ongoing tracking of inventory turnover data for more than 1,400 companies in 33 countries, and an international benchmarking research project called World Class by Principles, with assisting research partners in leading nations globally. So without further ado, I'd like to turn things over to Dr. Schonberger.
Thanks, Dwayne. Greetings to all of you. It's still morning here in Bellevue, Washington, across the lake from Seattle. Bellevue is famous for being the home of Microsoft. I can look out my window and see some tall buildings, several of which have the Microsoft logo on them. They're taking over the place. Well, let's get on with the theme. HR is Orchestrator of the Lean transformation. There's a couple of ways of looking at human resources. One is the human resource department, and we'll be talking about that a little bit, but the other way is just lowercase human resource management. If there's no human resource management department, human resource management still gets done. Some of the information in today's webinar comes from my very research-oriented book called Best Practices in Lean Six Sigma Process Improvement. I didn't like that title very well. I preferred the next words, a deeper look with telling evidence from the leanness studies. I write a lot about human resource issues. I've been doing it for many years. You might wonder, for someone like me, I'm an industrial engineer, what am I doing giving a webinar on a human resource topic? But you can see from this slide that I have written a lot about human resource management, especially in the quality and total quality and lean arenas. I actually did my master's work and my PhD work in a business school, and I actually had personnel as one of the 5 areas that I did exams in for my doctoral program. And just to acquaint you a little bit further with my HR credentials, the first article I ever wrote was back in 1970. It was entitled 10 Million U.S. Housewives Want to Work. It was in the Labor Law Journal. And then another one, Inflexible Working Conditions Keep Women Unliberated, in the Personnel Journal. The reason I got sidetracked into those issues is I was looking for a master's thesis, and my mother and my wife suggested this to me. So I did a big research project tapping women in the home, asking them mainly, would you seek gainful employment out of the home if there were decent child care facilities and part-time work opportunities, and all that. The results translated into 10 million U.S. housewives who want to work. Other than that, as an industrial engineer, I might say that industrial engineering is the engineering co-conspirator or counterweight, you might say, to the human resource department when it comes to workforce matters. So it's kind of natural for industrial engineers to be involved in this stuff. This slide indicates why the human resource segment is so important in the lean transformation. Since lean began, actually it began when it was called just-in-time production back in the 1980s and got renamed lean in the 1990s. But anyway, in that period of time, about 30 years, there have been order of magnitude reductions in most of the elements of the manufacturing enterprise. It started in the late 1970s. Dr. Deming and Dr. Turan were all over the place telling people, don't inspect quality into the product, instead take care of quality at the source. And the result of this was many companies that had maybe 100 inspectors reduced them down to 5. And then in the 1980s and 1990s, there were, for companies that were successful in lean, large reductions in the need for schedulers and material handlers and stock keepers and maintenance department people, because the operators were taking over their own machine maintenance. There was no need to have a lot of stock keeping people and material handling people because we were eliminating work in process stock rooms. As far as IT goes, lean minimized the number of job transactions and material transactions and labor transactions. That's not to say that IT has fewer people today, but it has much fewer people in those areas of IT. And then more moderate reductions are in the area of buyers and planners because of the combination job called buyer planner. Fewer cost reduction or cost accountants because of the large reductions in transactions. And the standard cost system and the cost variance system leading to lean accounting. Fewer trainers because of train the trainer. Fewer people involved in hiring because some of our advanced lean teams do a good part of their own hiring. And of course, fewer people in industrial relations because fewer labor issues. I don't know that there are fewer design engineers, but there are fewer design engineers designing parts because of standardization of parts and commonization. Fewer people in sales and marketing. Why not? Because lean kind of sells the product based on what it does for the customer, delivering flexibly quick on-time delivery. If you took a course in Marketing 101, you'd learn all about the 4 Ps of marketing: product, price, place, and promotion. But here we have several more things that help the product get sold. And senior executives, there might even be a lesser need for the number of senior executives because of strategic simplification, seeing lean in terms of customer and competitive and strategic benefits. We'll get to that a little more toward the end of this webinar. The 7 main themes that I am planning for this morning or this afternoon for most of you. We'll start with lean job design, then competitiveness, training, data-driven employee engagement, action zone ownership, lean performance management. I've written a lot of articles in that area. Lean in decline, the leanness studies that Dwayne mentioned really indicate that much to the surprise of a lot of people, lean is in decline. and then toward strategic human resource management. So let's start with lean job design. To me, the work cell is the standout feature of lean, where you take scattered processes, shops or office processes for that matter, and put them together into product family or flow-oriented clusters. That's not to say that for all companies, the work cell is the standout feature. If you consider a small job shop, probably the most important feature would be quick setup of machines. And the attitude, we'll think about work cells later. Human resource roles in this area are to advocate cells. And it's a natural thing, I think, for human resource management because of the job enlargement and enrichment benefits, the increases in company skill bank, and the subsequent reductions in turnover and lateness and absenteeism. And also, I'm going to try to convince you that lean upgrades the whole culture of the enterprise and upgrades performance management. So another HR role is to certify skills and cross-training and job rotation, possibly do something about the pay system, including a lot of companies have done, pay by skill. Here is a photo of a typical scene in low-wage countries all over the world, Bangladesh and India, and this happens to be in China. It's a very nice-looking plant, but it certainly is the opposite of lean. There's inventory everywhere. There's no cross-training at all. There's no job rotation at all. And if you want to see the opposite of that in the garment industry, here's an example from K Products in Orange City, Iowa. I actually talked to the people at K Products just yesterday, and I found out they aren't doing this anymore. Like everybody else in the garment industry, they offloaded the sewing of their garments to China. But anyway, this is what the sewing industry was beginning to do before it all went to lower wage countries. Everybody is standing up ergonomically correct because of that, and also because each person just takes a few steps from one machine to another. All of them are cross-trained. All of them have pride and understanding in how to build an entire shirt. There's hardly any inventory at all in evidence. So this is a very easy to understand picture of what lean looks like and why I consider cells to be the most important feature of lean, at least in factories. Cell building and cell maintenance, we have to consider the size of the cell, and maybe the ideal is somewhere around 5 people, but 7, 8, 9 will work. But I keep reading case studies where a company is saying, yes, we have shifted over to cells, and there are 17 or 27 or 35 people in the cell. No, I think not. I don't think it it's not an environment for the benefits of cells to thrive. The team benefits, peer pressure, self-management, and so forth. And how can you possibly cross-train and use job rotation when you have double-digit numbers of people? So wherever there are still assembly lines or production lines with double-digit numbers of people, usually the answer is break it up and reform into cells. And then the cross-training is a very important feature of lean. Make it visible. Most companies, the cross-training representations are in an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper or in a computer somewhere. But I think this is a very important feature for visual management. This comes from Boston Scientific, a versatility matrix, and you can see that on the left are the names of all of the employees, and they not only are trained in their home cell guide wires, but also in wire clips. I suppose the red buttons indicate people who are also qualified as trainers. Let's take a look at the self-management attributes of cells. With frequent job rotation and scant inventory, there's really no place to hide. So slackers feel the peer pressure of their teammates. They're letting down their teammates. Therefore, there's not much need for supervision, and there really may not be much need for performance reviews because of peer pressure, because of the possibility of everybody rating the performance of everybody else. And then continuing with self-management, the operators and teams may plot improvements on their own large graphs with photographs and so forth. And this is self-gratifying, and it's also an important update for walk-around managers and visitors to see what's going on and to nod their head in approval when things are going right. So the cultural development features of Lean, I think, are strong enough to overwhelm obstructions in societal cultures. What I'm thinking of is my many visits to Mexico and recently China and India, where if it's unstated, it's implicit. We have a different culture here, and how can you expect us to organize people into cells and expect them to take over management and supervision and things like that in peer pressure? Well, the organization of cells puts people together in a flow-oriented structure that makes it very clear when somebody is not pulling their weight. And this in itself tends to create a different culture, and never mind what the culture is out in society. If you consider young people going into the military and how quickly their sloppy behaviors and so forth are turned around by being in a culture that demands perfection, the same thing should happen in factories as well. But then in practice, management often imposes its own obstructions to culture development. And we're going to look at that in more detail, but it involves not allowing the cultural benefits of Lean to take root because the managers and engineers and technicians want to hog the show. It's a lot of fun to participate in Lean-based continuous improvement. So let's move on. Competitiveness training. In any cell, there are likely to be widely assorted talents and contributions. In a cell, there might be somebody who's a speed demon, but not a very good communicator. And there's an idea person that's always coming up with good ideas for process improvement, but is neither very fast, might be a borderline klutz, but is appreciated by everybody else in the cell because this is the person who comes up with ideas. So with all of those different types of talents, the impact of that should be customized training. Those who fit the company's needs and the employee's interests and are deserving, the company should be willing to spend the money and time on customized training. So if somebody is very fast and helpful and a communicator, but has trouble coming up with new ideas, maybe that person should be steeped in continuous process improvement methodologies. The targets of customized training are job skills, of course, and improvement skills, and also a sense of the customer awareness. Here they are in triangular fashion, how to do the job in others, That's task-oriented, how to improve processes, that's process improvement methodologies, and how to be competitive, and that is sense of the customer oriented. And I think we do pretty well on tasks and process improvement, but we don't do well at all in the area of, in the sense of the customer area. I hear about companies now and then that if it's going to be a slow week, we'll charter a bus and send our people to an excellent supplier or an excellent customer or somebody who's in a totally different industry, and that in itself can humble the people on the bus who thought they were doing very well and come back thinking we aren't doing well at all and we need to change. Lean focus competitiveness requires all employees to be trained to understand that lean wins orders, and lean also wins customers by beating the competition. In what? Lead times, flexibility to change products and quantities, quality of goods and services, and value, which is sort of the sum of the above three at lower cost. Lean retains customers and grows the business and preserves jobs by doing this continuously. Continuous improvement. In what sense? Well, ever quicker, more flexible, higher quality, greater value response everywhere. In the factories, in the transportation system, in the accounting department, and so forth. This really is the main benefit of Lean, the main objective of Lean, the main reason why we do Lean. It's measuring the benefits of Lean in the eyes of the customer. Why do customers buy from you? Because you're faster, you're more flexible, and so forth. That's four different words: quicker, flexible, quality, and value, but we can simplify it down to really one thing: waiting time. Fewer units waiting, less time waiting. Waiting, the reason for waiting is you aren't flexible enough. The reason for waiting is you aren't fast. The reason for waiting is defects and mishaps and so forth in the quality arena. So by focusing on waiting time, we have operationally simplified those four attributes of Lean. Also, units waiting are visible and countable and comparable. Waiting time requires a stopwatch, but counting units is visible and easily done. Every unit that is in a state of waiting is unfortunately a hiding place for a multitude of ills. Most things that go wrong in a company do require longer waits to internal customers and the final customer. Also, units waiting lengthen discovery time and contaminate the causal trail, and if there's a disaster, it's magnified. Plenty of recalls in the automobile industry illustrate this idea. You have a lot of cars out there, and they all have to have the same defect, or most of them do. Pictures. What do we mean by quick response? Well, this is a photograph from Bank of America in Seattle. Several years ago, they established the 5-minute service guarantee. If you have to wait 5 minutes for a teller, we'll pay you $5. I was a depositor at Bank of America, and I was so impressed by this that I contacted the head of human resources at Bank of America, and I asked them, how can you do this? You have a roller coaster workload. You have busy days, Social Security check day and paycheck day, and busy times of the day, the noon rush and so forth. How can you possibly make this guarantee and not get eaten alive by paying out $5 all the time? Well, the answer was we have every flexible labor trick in the book. We have, of course, our loan officers who will run over to man a teller station if there's a need for it. And primarily, we get flexible labor by college kids, some of whom come in every day at noon, and some who come in on known paycheck days and so forth. So that's ever quicker. It used to be called Seafirst Bank. More flexibility. That's maybe some of you, you're maybe sitting at a desk right now. Are you flexible? Ever quicker and more flexible. This is Atlantic Envelope Company in Atlanta, Georgia. And behind that partition is a transformation from order entry going through 4 departments and taking a week to 2 cross-trained clerks behind the partition who cut the order and process time down to 1 day. And they also are managing their own results. You can see that on Thursday, March 5th, they processed 47 orders in an average time of 7.9 hours. So that became the new plotted point on their March improvement graph. And on the left, we can see the February graph, and behind that, the January graph, and they are improving continuously. And this is visual management. It's on display. They're proud of it, and they are rewarded by positive comments whenever anybody goes by and sees this. Why not training in financials? Well, financials are abstract and influenced by a multitude of variables well outside the zone of responsibility of most associates. And the effects of most financials are long-range and time-distant from what most associates are doing. Lead time, flexibility, quality, and value, on the other hand, show up, the successes and failures show up quickly. And also we I think, understand that if you take care of lead time, flexibility, quality, and value, the financial gains will take care of themselves. So even though financial gains are the main reason why you're in business, this is not what you want to populate the visual management system with, because they are too far removed from the capabilities and interests of the employees. However, it is effective to train associates to be budget watchers, and also for them to know the cost of things. The first time I visited the 747 plant in Renton, Washington, I was very impressed by a wall of small parts bins. And on every small parts bins was the price of the item in the bin. So you can imagine that a simple bolt to hold a Boeing 737 together might cost a lot of money. So it might have a price on it of $40 for one bolt. This is was a clever way to make sure that employees are not going to be careless about use of small parts. And everyone must learn how the company is doing financially. I think the ideal way to do that is in an all-company quarterly meeting, rather than putting that stuff up on the walls all the time, instead of, in many cases, the things that they can control and relate to on a short-term basis. Data-driven employee engagement. We've got problems here. Big weaknesses in this area of lean-based process improvement. Lean process improvement needs constant rivers of data, and it gets plenty of that in a mechanized way, but very little from the workforce. That didn't used to be the case, but after Dr. Deming died, it seems like the continuous collection of data on processes, on things going wrong, kind of lost its punch. What kinds of data recording are we talking about? Well, every day, because they occur every day, is recording things going wrong on check sheets and flip charts and so forth. And then as they occur, nonconformities, defects, and so forth. And then in teams analyze the data and come up with corrective actions and make presentations. This is the low-cost natural route to continuous improvement. Unfortunately, as I mentioned before, I think there's a tendency in a lot of companies for the managers and engineers and technical people to take over process improvement, and really it leaves out the frontline employees, and just as important or more important is it leaves out the elemental basis for process improvement, and that's process data. Frustrations I have in italics here because that's my favorite word when it comes to collecting information on things going wrong. Frustrations, I believe, are nearly always business problems. When somebody says, I'm frustrated, well, what are you frustrated about? The specifications are wrong. The tools aren't sharp. I've not been trained in this. And they won't let me go home. I've got serious family issues, and I'm thinking of quitting this place. All of those are business problems. And they should be recorded, and choice of words is very meaningful in some cases. Instead of saying we're collecting errors and defects and so forth, we're collecting frustrations. That personalizes the things that are going wrong. So anyway, every associate every day collect and record their frustrations. I almost think that this should be mandated. Every employee, we expect you to come up with at least one thing to record every day. Not only is this cathartic for employees, they have a way of expressing the deep frustrations that all of us have, but it also serves as basic data for continuous and project improvement. One of the best examples I've heard of taking this route is at the Barry Weimiller companies. There's an article about this in Target magazine in 2009, and I've written about it also, where maybe the CEO of the company goes around and says, what are you frustrated about? That's what I want to hear. That's what I want to discuss. Also, a weakness in the area of lean-based process improvement is the trend toward infrequent projects dominated by professionals rather than all employees continuously. And then the upshot of that is we get bogged down in analysis and analysis tools. So here we have popular process improvement pursuits. I won't call them all tools because they're of a different stripe. The ones on the right are analysis tools, and what this is all about is thinking and studying the process. And on the left we have actually changing the processes. Thinking on the right, doing on the left. You're changing the process when you have quick changeover and small lots and cross training and TAC-based scheduling and one-piece flow and supplier partnerships and so forth. Ideally, associates implement with no analysis, but that will not happen without broad and deep training. And I'm not putting down the thinking and the studying and the analysis side of it. I'm just saying we should, in most cases, just do it. But of course, you don't know what to do unless there has been broad and deep training. So the HR folks can help steer most lean training towards not so much the thinking and the analysis, but the what's and why's and how's of cells, quick changeover, fail-safing, and so forth. Visual management I've got a special example here of that. This comes from Northwest Hospital in Seattle, where a number of years ago, Nurse Debby, who worked in the surgical suite area, was complaining about the situation in surgery. Nobody could ever remember a surgery starting on time. But then they hired a colleague that I've known for a long time, and he came in there and said, "Debbie, why don't you try visual management here? It can make a big impact." So Debbie cleared out a sort of a closet near the surgical suites, and she put up a big sign on there, a who was late sign chart. So this would be her chart for the 8 a.m. surgery. Dr. Frederick was there on time, Dr. Singh, Nurse Olson, the instruments people, the maintenance people, all of those people were on time, but Dr. Vickery was not on time. So there's a big check mark beside Dr. Vickery, and within, I don't know, I can't remember the details, but I think Nurse Debbie said it took about 1 week for the surgeries to start coming in on time. Action zone ownership. Management by management goals. Now, management by goals is not only commonplace, but almost de rigueur in the action zones all the way up to the top organizational levels. Numeric goals are out there. Set by management the next level up. Basis often, unfortunately, a hope and a prayer. It's set by somebody who isn't doing the work. Well, this is like a New Year's resolution, I suppose. The contemporary presumption is this is the best practice. It's necessary in a well-managed company. The downside, here's the words of Dr. Deming, goals are necessary for you and for me, but numeric goals set by other people have effects opposite to the effects sought. So if not numeric goals, what then? Well, multi-period trend charts. We're tracking continuous improvement metrics. It's a dynamic indicator. It's beneficial for self-management. We saw the example from the company in Atlanta that makes envelopes, custom envelopes. It's motivational. It's prideful. An improving trend out there in the open for everybody to see is praising the people responsible. And it's self-praise, but it's also external praise that comes forth from management. A worsening or flat trend scolds, and that's an opportunity for a visiting customer or a visiting high-level executive to stop and say, what can I do to help? That's not to say that a goal line should not be on the chart. You hardly ever see a trend chart anymore without a goal line on it, and that's okay if set by the workforce. How do you judge a good trend if you don't have a goal line? Well, by steepness, by long time span, and by low variation. A trend line that's going up in the right direction but is jumping all over the place indicates that things are done rather sporadic here. And wherever there's a high variation, you've got inventory piling up. And it doesn't look very lean anymore. Lean performance management, common metrics, unfortunately the most common management metrics, those in visual display are outside the employee's zone of influence. We're talking about here, and I see them in most factories, productivity charts, output, on-time, utilization, cost variance are disappearing quickly in the age of lean accounting, like cost reports. They're unfair, Dr. Deming told us. His figure was 85% of causes are in the management system. You aren't trained properly, you aren't getting the materials on time, and so forth. So by posting those kind of metrics in the workplace, it suggests that the work crew is at fault. But it's unfair. And not only that, but it's ineffective because frontline associates have very small percentages of influence on complex aggregated metrics like productivity, like being on schedule, like having high utilization or right-sized utilization, and so forth. I wrote 2 or 3 articles on lean efficiency versus lean effectiveness. And the efficiency area, that applies in the action zones that we're talking about here. It's doing things right continuously, reducing waiting in queues. Effectiveness at the middle management level is by departments, controlling up and reporting down. And this relies on aggregated inventories such as unit costs and so forth. Effectiveness at the executive level is not departments but the whole organization. Do things right infrequently. And here the lean effectiveness metrics are profit, revenue, market share, customer retention, and so forth. And those are highly aggregated metrics. Let's take a closer look at lean efficiency. How do you measure quick response? Count the units waiting or time the waiting time. Units waiting is a lot easier than actually having a stopwatch or something because the inventories are out there. It's a universal, it's required by law to count the inventory and to have an accurate count. And reducing the number of units waiting isn't what lean is all about. It's reducing the time waiting. However, units waiting is a convenient surrogate for response time. And it's out there. It's in the books. In most services, however, there is no universal measure like inventory counts, so each entity must devise its own time measure, like Seafirst Bank or Bank of America, which said 5 minutes is long enough, and if it takes longer than that, we'll pay you $5. At the middle management and executive area, the measures of effectiveness are difficult, confusing, because they are so highly aggregated. And that creates problems. I like this example, which I got from the monthly newsletter of Michael Paris Associates in Oak Brook, Illinois consulting firm. I have never met Michael Paris, and I don't know these guys, but I like this. As variables go up, the validity goes down. At the task level, there may be only 5 variables. At the process level, 20. At the business process level, 150. At the business unit level, 1,000. And at the enterprise level, there may be 100,000 variables that add up to why the costs are going up, or why market share is not going up, and so forth. Inventory actually can be measured at all different levels. At the highly aggregated level, it doesn't mean nearly as much as it does at the where the work is performed. So, with all these ambiguities in process improvement, what kind of executive and manager reactions might we expect? For some executives, I'm sure, maybe all executives, but particularly some, are aware of the shaky metrics that they are supposedly obligated to manage with. What's their reaction? Avoid commitment. We can't trust those measures, at least in the short run. Another executive reaction might be role confusion. We don't have enough time, and I'm confused about whether I should be taking charge of this or not, so because of that, we'll delegate it down to lower managers, and then we start losing touch with the whole thing. And then the third type of manager is the management by the numbers manager, and here it's management by the aggregated numbers. This has the facade of rationality and good management. It's the way you are taught in the business schools, and some of the best companies do it the most, but it invites tampering. That's another Dr. Deming's favorite word. You're tampering with something that has far too many causes. So what can executives and managers do about all this? Well, very simple little things. Go to the action zones. Frequent short visits to find out what's going on. However, this will not work. Management by wandering around, Tom Peters' phrase from his book years ago, In Search of Excellence. What do you talk about if you're out there meeting with people and so forth? If there are no visual metrics on the wall, it's largely a waste of time. You're going to be talking about the weather and sports and things like that. On the other hand, if there are meaningful measures in the workplace, and not the ones that we've looked at and called unfair, and not the ones that are so highly aggregated that they are not meaningful anymore, they're too confusing, if you have good measures on the wall, then that's a very effective medium for give and take between the people who do the work and people from the outside. And then executives can attend presentation and celebratory events. In fact, most executives feel that that's a part of their job. But this needs to be not only established, but systematized. Systematized events that require attendance and are scheduled and so forth. At Seafirst Bank, they had regular presentation and celebration events there, and the families were invited, the families of the employees. Both of the above, best ways for executives and managers to know what's going on. And if the executive or the department head is just trying to know what's going on by reading reports and looking at metrics, it's a poor substitute. But what if you aren't an executive? What you can do is keep inviting executives to team presentations and celebrations and visitations. Why Lean needs HR help? Because Lean is in decline. My Leanness research, which started in 1994, now it started with a small number of manufacturing companies in the United States, the United Kingdom, and France. And what I was doing is looking at inventory turnover, long-term trends in inventory turnover at these companies. Well, now there are 1,500 or 1,600 companies in this database from, I think Dwayne said 93 or 23 companies. It's 27 now. But anyway, I've been able to track all the way back to 1950 for the U.S. contingent, the average improvement rates based on a very simple little way of judging the trends for each of these companies. And I get new data for all of these companies from their annual reports every year. Of course, these are only publicly held companies. Bored by Lean, Quality Digest had a feature story on this in 2008. But here we have the results of my leanness studies based on metrics, metrics from trend data. And it's very clear for the U.S. contingent that in the 1960s, complacency set in. The inventories got worse and worse and worse. The inventory turnovers sunk and hit bottom around 1975 and 1976, and then started to climb. You might call it the JIT era, but at first it was the TQ, Total Quality era, inspired primarily by Deming and Duran and Crosby and so forth. But then around 1980, the first articles and then my own book, Japanese Manufacturing Techniques, in 1982 came out, and that all of that started the just-in-time era, you might call it. And the inventory turnovers, average inventory turnovers went up during that period until the late 1980s. And then I call it JIT fatigue set in. Lean to the rescue. When the machine that changed the world came out, that invigorated the fading lean just-in-time movement, and the inventory turns went up again. But in the 2000s, we have lean fatigue apparently, because the inventory numbers are going down again, getting worse. In Japan, I don't have nearly as much data, but I'm pretty convinced that the trend was up and then down and then flattened out, and I know that it's improving now today. So anyway, we've got lean fatigue in most of the world, particularly in the United States. And Japan had the worst inventory turnover results of any country in the world for a long time. But finally, after 2 decades of economic malaise in Japan, industry is doing something about this. Has quality followed a similar pattern? I think probably so. Will Lean and Six Sigma in services follow a similar pattern? I suppose so. Why is this? Is it a symptom of weak executive interest because Lean is not seen as strategic? I think so. Lean is a great practice, but I'm convinced it has been wrongly presented and wrongly measured. Its focus on waste puts the cart before the horse. Here's the customer in back of the cart instead of pulling the cart. So to correct the problem here by making elimination of the 7 wastes the definition of inventory, we have to redesignate the definition and the promotion of it in customer terms and marketing terms. So putting the customer out in front of the cart is a matter of defining Lean in terms of ever quicker, more flexible response with better quality and higher value. In doing that, waste elimination, a very valuable Lean technique, becomes an enabler, not the primary definition. One of the most highly quoted articles of the 1980s in Harvard Business Review was George Stock's article, Time, the Next Source of Competitive Advantage. He gave us as primary examples in that article, or in his book that came out 2 years later, Toyota and Milliken and 2 or 3 other famous companies famed for their Lean efforts. And he said it's a source of competitive advantage, and therefore it is strategic, and therefore it should have a good chance of getting the attention and keeping the attention of senior executives. Summary points. This is my last slide. Does the Lean agenda require an HR department? Well, the quick answer is no. Many Lean successes have featured train the trainer, just do it, and so forth. However, there's a problem here. We've seen that Lean is from my Lean studies, tends to die out. And one of the reasons for that is lack of documented standards and embedded Lean culture. So HR's primary role in the Lean transformation are purveying Lean practices, systematizing them, recertifying skills, and so forth, and including in Lean standard work key elements of Lean HR, avidly promoting Lean strategic and competitive attributes. So I think I'm done with my formal presentation and open to questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Schonberger. We did have a couple questions come in, and I'll start with the one most recent. If Lean is on the decline, is there something that's sitting there in the waiting, and is it simply Lean renamed?
I don't know that. That's everybody's favorite question. I would dodge the question by saying we haven't done Lean right. So Lean has a long, important life ahead of it if we will only start doing the things, especially in the human resource arena, that are essential to its effectiveness.
Okay, earlier on in the presentation, you mentioned the idea of when production is slow, of sending folks out to benchmark with other companies. First of all, who is involved in organizing something like that to know when production is low and when to take advantage of that? And do you have any suggestions for what might take place when a group returns from one of these types of benchmarking opportunities?
That's a great question. I think that's a natural role for the HR department to systematize things like this. So the HR people are in close touch with the manufacturing supervisors and so forth, and if it looks like there is a slow day coming up, we have on our agenda 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 plants that we would like to take people to, especially plants of our customers if they're really good or if they are not satisfied with what we're doing. So then the other side of it is what to do when they come back, and everybody does a trip report and makes a presentation. Making presentations is a part of continuous improvement. This is an important element of continuous improvement, going on benchmarking studies to other companies.
Great. Looks like we have one final question here. This person works in an organization where operations and production folks are responsible for training that involves operations and production. It's not a function of HR. Do you have any suggestions for how you get HR engaged and what that transition may look like from it being an operations responsibility to HR?
If it's up to the production people, it'll last for a while. If the operations people, if the HR people take it over, they can systematize it and ensure. It's natural for the HR people to be involved in the training because they should be the ones doing the documentation of standard work, the certification of skills, and so forth. And if they aren't involved in that, they should be.
Okay. Well, it looks like that's all the questions that have come in as of right now. So I think, Dr. Schonberger, that'll end our time today. I'd like to, first of all, thank you, Dr. Schonberger, not only for your presentation here, but just for your many contributions to the Lean body of knowledge and for your ongoing work in that area. So for all those participating in today's session, you can look for an email from me in the coming minutes to an hour with information on how you can obtain the presentation materials. As mentioned earlier, a recording of this session will be available following the closing here. So thanks again for everyone participating in today's presentation. Have a great day.
Thanks, Dwayne.
Thank you, Dr. Schonberger.